Welcome to this final part of Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about the murder of Dawn Hamilton and the exoneration of Kirk Bloodsworth. And where you're picking up with us, we're gonna find out who the real killer is, someone that Kirk knew. It takes so many strange turns, but this is how he found out. Let's take a look at this video.
Kirk Bloodsworth had not been keeping up with developments in Dawn Hamilton's case when he met up with prosecutor Ann Brobst at an East Shore Burger King. This was the same prosecutor who swayed a jury to convict him of a crime he didn't commit twice. She told him that authorities finally got a hit on Dawn's killer, a man named Kimberly Shea Ruffner. But that wasn't all. The Washington Post wrote at the time, in a plot twist few involved could have imagined, the Baltimore County State Attorney's Office now believes the killer in the 1984 slaying has been hiding behind bars since a month after the crime. In fact, Bloodsworth and Ruffner lived one floor and a few cells apart from each other in the same maximum security prison. When given the opportunity to speak in court about the murder, Ruffner said simply, "There is nothing I can say." He pled guilty to the murder and will serve the rest of his life behind bars.
It's kind of a crazy twist that this took.
Yeah.
And you hear that Kirk just burst into tears. He just got really choked up when they heard that finally they had caught someone, because that means that the state then fully believes that he is an innocent man, because you can be exonerated because of DNA, but there's absolutely no doubt now. It has empirically been proven true that Kirk is innocent, but on top of that, that someone that he knew, someone that he said he lifted weights with behind bars was guilty of this. They served time in the same prison for about 5 years. It's crazy. Now, they weren't friends behind bars. You'll see a lot of articles that will say that they were pals. From what I have read, they were not friends, but they were friendly and they knew each other.
They were acquaintances.
And what I understand is that even though Kirk was very private about what he was convicted for, as I would be too, because that's how you get your ass fucking kicked. You're a child murderer / rapist. He says that there's no way that Kimberly didn't know that he was serving time for that crime. Do you think that that's true?
I think so, because I feel like, I mean, kind of like a school, when something happens to somebody, even if they don't say it, it kind of gets around. It gets around. Even if they never say anything to anybody, or if they just say it to their best friend and they don't tell anybody, it gets around. So I do believe that he knew. It's a shame that he didn't say anything or speak up, because he was already in prison anyways. But yeah, it's just the odds of them being so close and having no idea that this man was an innocent man and the one who was doing it, or the one who committed the crime. Yeah. It's just the odds of that happening are just astronomical.
And yet, like, that's the only way that this story could have turned out. It's a groundbreaking case, and of course it's gonna have these bizarre twists and turns around the way. It almost doesn't feel real, but what feels very real is that Kimberly Shea Ruffner, like we talked about in part 1, fits the profile that I really believe law enforcement should have been clued off on. He has a history of violence and of sexually assaulting women. There's one case that I read, and I think this is the one that put him behind bars, but we're gonna have a pop-up that lets me know if I'm right or wrong. That basically he had assaulted a woman with a knife, and she had actually turned the knife on him and stabbed him in the foot.
Oh, wow.
In order to get away. And the police followed the blood trail, and that's how they were able to apprehend him. But had investigators really been doing their due diligence in vetting all the tips that had come in and the people that were spotted around the area, the people that were known to be around that area, like Kimberly Shea Ruffner was known to be in that wooded area that Dawn was murdered, that woman wouldn't have had to stab him in the foot. There's so much that could have been prevented. She wouldn't have had to stab him. Kirk wouldn't have had to serve time. There's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. What's interesting is that Kirk doesn't dwell on that. When you hear him speak today, and he really is an advocate against the death penalty and for the rights of those who have been incarcerated and convicted, that they should have DNA testing, post-conviction DNA testing. In fact, he started an organization called the Kirk Bloodsworth Post-Conviction DNA Testing Program. So what is this, Daron?
So essentially, here, I pulled it up here, but essentially what that foundation does is it provides funding for states to conduct post-conviction DNA testing, help support the work of the state and local crime laboratories and medical examiner offices through federal funding. So essentially, he's just trying to get more funding to do the thing that helped him get out. So if somebody's convicted, do DNA testing, because it does cost money. You have to send it to labs. You have to send it to more than one lab to know that they weren't messing with the DNA.
Right.
So it does cost money, and essentially what that does is it just gives money to states so that they can run these DNA tests for people who are already convicted.
And he wants this to be approved at a federal level, but right now he's dealing at a state level. I listened to an interview with him where he talks about just how in Kentucky, post-conviction programs are like nothing. And he was just saying that what he wants to do with this organization is that we lock up these people and we can talk about like the prison state that is the United States and the huge population of incarcerated individuals that we have, and we just and then it just stops. We just don't serve them, and we sort of erase them of all of their rights and all of their humanity. And he questions that, and I think it's a really interesting conversation. And he has the stories that he shares and some of the experiences that he went through are incredibly harrowing, especially because he is innocent. Now we can get into a conversation about guilty versus the innocent, and I think that that's important as well. But I hope we can all agree that an innocent man should never have had to go through that. He's compensated about $300,000, which comes out to like I can't remember, like a small amount per day for his time.
Yeah,
that's a lot. It's a lot of money, but it doesn't.
It doesn't really erase what happened to him and what he experienced and what he saw in jail. And to me, the fact that he's not the only one that this has happened to.
So 142 people have been exonerated from death row since 1976. And he is, there's this article that I read where he goes to the Witness for Innocence Project, and they just talk about him stopping in front of the portraits of 18 people, and he knows all their stories. And you have this community of people who have been exonerated and who have been found innocent but were convicted for crimes that they didn't commit. Some of them just absolutely heinous crimes. The murder of Dawn Hamilton is just it's absolutely brutal, and to have to sit with that and know that you didn't do it, but then have an entire town just think that cheer that you are going to be getting the death penalty. On top of that, there's a story that Kirk tells where while he was serving time behind bars, prison guards came up to him and said, "Hey, we need you to paint this chair up there." And when you're locked up, 23 hours out of the day, he was like, I'm very excited to paint this chair. It's a nice change of scenery. And he realizes that he's painting his own gas chamber. And the way that he would have been killed had he gotten there, made it to that death chamber is just awful, just horrible. It's they would gas would have all these toxic fumes would have gone in there, and the guards were saying that for a guy of his size, it'd be better that he just takes big deep breaths, because otherwise, if he tries to fight it, he'll have seizures, and it'll be much more of a fit. And that just to live and sit in that, and they thought it was hilarious that he was painting his own death chamber.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, and maybe this is gonna cause some problems in the comment section, but I've never been a fan of the concept of an eye for an eye. He does this to me, I want to do this to him. I don't think, even if somebody commits a crime like that or a crime against me, I don't think that I have the right to take somebody else's life. And that's just how I feel. And I'm sure there's people who have had their family members killed who would say the exact opposite. But to me, I would not be able to live with myself knowing that I was the one who signed off on putting this person to death, and especially that this person is innocent. And who knows if they would have ever found out if he was innocent without him fighting for it.
What if this crime had been taken place 20 years earlier? I mean, that is an innocent man who is put to death. And
I'm sure there are people who that has happened to, for sure.
Absolutely. And it would be interesting too, and I don't have this information in front of me, it'd be interesting to see if there are any sort of post mortem exonerations that have happened where DNA evidence or other evidence has surfaced after someone has already been put to death. I don't know how that's a corrupt system. Something that he said that I thought was really interesting was that there isn't a system you can create run by human beings that is infallible. And he references the prosecutor, who is incredibly smart, the detectives, they were all smart, the judges, everything, juries made up of concerned citizens that were trying to do the right thing, that were trying to get a child murderer off the streets, and all of them got it wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that he has this unique perspective that I was fascinated to listen to. In the week leading up to this taping, he petitioned for Kimberly Shea Ruffner, this guy who is not just, on the one hand, just deceived him and let him serve time and had no guilty conscience about that. And then on the other hand, just a straight up cold-blooded murderer.
Right.
He petitioned for him not to receive the death penalty. And Kirk has come out as just adamantly against the death penalty in all cases. And I feel like when you have this lived experience, this unique lived experience, we should be inclined to listen.
We should. I mean, he obviously, went through something so horrible. And if anybody should want somebody else to, pay the price, it should be him. And the fact that he doesn't, I think, should give people, I don't know, just like a little sense of humility, maybe, and just understand that. That like maybe that's not the answer. Maybe the answer isn't just to kill somebody. There are other ways to take care of criminals that don't involve taking somebody else's life.
Right. And I just keep coming back to this quote. I think it's so powerful that there isn't a system you can create run by human beings that is infallible.
Yeah.
And yet we are so bold to convict those. I'm guilty of it myself. I know that like there are times where I'll like knee-jerk reaction to a story, but because of my human nature, I am absolutely fallible and I will get things wrong.
And I think that's also why science-based evidence is so powerful, because there is no emotion. There is no feelings involved. It's just the DNA or the science is what it is. It's black or white, and that's how it is. So I think that part of science really helps in a system where it is run by humans, where there is human error all the time.
Right. It makes me think of the evidence that was brought against Kirk Bloodsworth, and they actually built up quite a robust yet circumstantial case.
Yeah.
And it was all these different witnesses that alleged this, and a lot of stuff that had come out after his name or something had already been broadcast on the television. And it was all this stuff. You just have to toss it aside because of the scientific evidence that absolutely proved his innocence. I could talk about this case all day. I think it's a really interesting and just absolutely groundbreaking. Daron, thank you so much for coming on and explaining DNA for me.
Oh my gosh, I got to nerd out today. Best day.
I was reading through this and my eyes were just crossing while I was doing my research. I was like, well, Daron knows it, so that'll be fine.
Yes.
Well, we'd like to hear from you guys now in the comment section below. In this third part, we got into some heavy subjects. We talked about capital punishment, DNA exoneration, and convictions. We'd like to hear from you now. What are your thoughts on this case? Had you heard about it before? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time on Murder with Friends.